What's going on, guys? Uncle UU, aka UU007, coming at you again with another video. And today we're going to be talking about the Robert Downey Jr. casting for Doctor Doom. I have a lot to say, but I'm going to try not to say too much. I've been trying to take my time and really mine out everything that I would like to say pertaining to this topic. First and foremost, I am happy to see Robert Downey Jr. coming back, but I do feel like there's a lot more layers at play coming from a comic book fan perspective, a fan of Doctor Doom, possibly the most iconic Marvel villain that we've ever had, has some of the best moments in Marvel, some of the best storylines in Marvel. There's a reason why the Fantastic Four movies from back in the day, even the 2014 Fantastic Four movie, didn't really do what it set out to do. A lot of the issues with those movies came down to the depiction of Doctor Doom. We have not gotten a good representation of this character. So I feel like, especially with the MCU, what they've shown to be able to do with these characters, I feel like them dropping the ball on Doctor Doom is going to be a huge misstep. And if I'm being completely honest, I feel like casting Robert Downey Jr. may turn out to be something that comes back to bite Marvel in the ass, especially considering the fact that they already had a storyline that they were kind of building to with Kang that could have potentially led into Doctor Doom. Anybody that knows a little bit of Kang's actual lore knows that he does have some connection to Victor Von Doom and Reed Richards, depending on which version of the origin story you're going with for Kang. So there is ways for them to bring in Doctor Doom, but I just feel like with Jonathan Majors obviously not being called back to be Kang, I feel like that they're kind of playing catch up with themselves at this point to try to just do something that is going to work. They've already established certain things with variants and with different versions of these characters within the Marvel landscape. So there is multiple different ways that they can go about explaining why Doctor Doom looks like basically Tony Stark. I feel like that you could possibly have some good storylines, some good moments pertaining to that, but I just feel like this may be Marvel just kind of throwing their hands up, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to give the fans what they want, but only certain fans. You know, people have been clamoring for Robert Downey Jr. to come back as Tony Stark since Endgame. He has his fan base, and they are ravenous. And anything related to Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Tony Stark, their fans are going to that particular fan base is going to eat that up. But I feel like that hurts the larger MCU in some points, because we miss out on better storylines. We miss out on storylines that don't have to necessarily do with Tony Stark. We miss out on being able to develop other characters that have a lot more story that can be told, and honestly better moments. You know, instead of it being a storyline where Doctor Doom, because of this casting, we're going to always somehow, some way tie Doctor Doom into Tony Stark now going forward. Yes, there is versions of him in the comic book that was Tony Stark, and there's, you know, versions of Doctor Doom that became Iron Man. So I guess you could say that there, because it's part of the source material, that it works, but every single version of Doctor Doom, every single comic book about Doctor Doom is not going to obviously be adapted into the MCU. So I just feel like this is more so of a marketing gamble as opposed to them actually thinking this out and having it be well thought out and well planned out. Honestly, I'm excited, but also I'm a little bit weary because Secret Wars, the original as well as the 2015 one, is has some of my favorite comic book moments, period. I mean, the Hulk lifting the mountain range, and Mr. Fantastic basically trying to piss him off to keep him strong enough to lift it, because all the superheroes are trapped underneath the mountain range, and like Mr. Fantastic is like talking shit basically to try to make sure that the Hulk stays pissed off enough to keep lifting the mountain. When Doctor Doom and Galactus basically go to try to like run up on the Beyonder, like within like the first couple of issues, or it might have been the first couple of pages, and basically Beyonder just kind of swipes him away. Obviously 2015 Secret Wars has so many great Doctor Doom moments, so many great moments, too many to count. but I just feel like we're going to be missing out on being able to see some of these moments come to life. We're going to miss out on Doctor Doom being able to be fully developed unless they do a cop out where it's basically that isn't the main version of Doctor Doom. But for all of that, why bring back Robert Downey Jr.? You know, I just feel like at some point, Marvel, Disney, whoever, they stopped listening. They stopped listening, or they only listen to what they feel like is the most marketable. So right now we've had a lot of more women centric media, which is fine, but that might not translate as well when you're trying to adapt storylines based off of characters that are universally hated in the Marvel universe. Like, I'm talking about Captain Marvel. Like, nobody really liked Carol Danvers in the comics, so it would make sense that trying to put her at the forefront for the sake of marketing might not work. There's smart moves, there's moves that make sense on paper, and then there's moves where if you know your audience and you really understand that this is a fandom that has had connections to these stories that has stretched back decades, maybe you don't keep trying to appeal to new fans and people that what I'm saying are kind of just new to this and kind of just here for the spectacle. Maybe go back to just making decisions based off of having these characters be accurate representations of the characters that we've already come to know and love. So we may never get an actual like fully comic book accurate version of Doctor Doom now. And I don't know if I'm happy about that. I'm very much on the fence. I'm very much torn, and I'm just hoping that Marvel can, pull it off. If I'm being honest, that brings me to my next point pertaining to Kang and how I kind of feel like it's unfair for them to have handled Kang, that character, the way that they've handled it. General Ross, has been recast, and he was recast, and it was sad because William Hurt had passed and everything else like that, and it was unfortunate, it was sudden, but they had plans for the character, so for the sake of continuing the story and keeping that character alive, they allowed him to basically be recast. So that's a good thing. I feel like Harrison Ford will do well. But if we're going into the whole topic of castings in general for these characters, I feel like they've been building. They've released multiple movies, and they've been building up this Kang storyline that has had missteps along the way. Jonathan Majors getting into legal trouble being one of those missteps. And I just find it convenient that after everything that has happened, all of the issues with the multiverse saga, when it pertains to Kang no longer being a viable, and in my opinion he still is viable because they've already shown that there's variants, so they could literally just recast them. But because of these missteps along the way, they decide to basically rework the whole thing. Even with that, it feels like it's not based off of trying to do what the fans would like them to do. I mean, even if it was a circumstance where Jonathan Majors was didn't get in any type of legal trouble, I still feel like, from a stance of marketing, if the idea had presented itself, if the opportunity had presented itself, that somehow, some way, they would have found a way to bring back Tony Stark in this way, or Robert Downey Jr. for this. I don't feel like this is something that just is a matter of the moment. I feel like this is something that Marvel has potentially had up their sleeve for a while now. There's been talks about Doctor Doom, and there's been talks about them bringing back Tony Stark for years now. Years. Even ever since they referenced Secret Wars, ever since they mentioned incursions, ever since they mentioned that the Fantastic Four would be coming, everybody knew what we were building to. And that storyline, yeah, Kang is in it, but Kang is not the main focus of that storyline. It is Doctor Doom. So what I'm a little bit worried about is that, this is something that maybe not the Russos coming back, maybe not them fast tracking it the way that they're fast tracking it, maybe not in this way, but just them kind of having Kang be a fake out, or just, what I'm saying, proving him being a secondary villain may have been something that they had planned this entire time. And even that just screams a lack of understanding and a lack of execution. And I feel like Jonathan Majors just potentially could have gotten the shitty end of the stick when it comes to that, because they were building him up, but every single like depiction that we've had of him thus far has not been anything extremely intimidating or extremely scary. I mean, hell, I heard that they rewrote Ant-Man, or reshot it or rewrote it so that Jonathan Majors would not basically kill Scott Lang in that movie. And that was supposed to be, and this is a rumor, take it with a grain of salt, but if that rumor is true, it just kind of goes to show that he may have well never was supposed to be the main bad. So my the point that I'm making is that, are these decisions that's being made, recasting Robert Downey, now permanently tying the MCU's greatest hero to what should be the MCU's greatest villain at this point, and having it be the same character? Was that something that they had planned all along? And if that was, what was the point of even having Kang come in? They literally could have just been building to Doctor Doom. There was rumors that Doctor Doom was supposed to appear in Black Panther 2, which would have made that movie so much better if it turned out that, circumstances with Namor, and, I'm saying, the vibranium and everything else like that, if it really was, it turned out that this was all Doctor Doom behind the scenes doing that. And maybe it still is going to be that. Maybe they'll retcon, maybe they'll, but it's not handled in the same way that past Marvel movies has been handled, to where you can follow the storyline and things tie into each other cohesively. So if you're bringing in Doctor Doom now, you have no choice but to rush it. You have no choice but to try to fill in the blanks retroactively, and that's not going to mesh as well. The MCU has built itself on thoughtfulness, and I just feel like this is not as thoughtful. I feel like it's a little bit of a cash grab. I feel like fans have been complaining about certain things, so they're trying to just overhaul, but they're overhauling in a very drastic way. And I just, I'm wondering if it was even worth Kang being a part of the storyline at this point. I'm wondering if it even mattered. I wonder if it even mattered, and I wonder if Jonathan Majors ever had a real shot. Because if I'm being honest, they could have brought him back. It wouldn't have been that hard to bring him back. It wouldn't have been that hard to recast his character, at least. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't have been that hard to continue with the storyline. Marvel has decades worth of story that you can take inspiration from. When one writer screws up a storyline, another writer comes in and, retroactively changes it. It's called a retcon. There's other things that you can do besides, hey, let's take Robert Downey Jr. and put him as Doctor Doom just because, instead of giving it to any of the other actors that we wanted to play Doctor Doom. Cillian Murphy. Like, there's other people that would have killed the role and would have been, I mean, let's be honest, the Infinity Saga is supposed to be over. So we don't need to keep seeing the main character of the Infinity Saga. We don't need the new saga of movies, which was supposed to be the multiverse saga, to still be dealing with the ramifications of the life and death of Tony Stark. We're supposed to have new stories now. So we don't need to keep seeing this. And now it's a circumstance where now we'll have two separate sagas where it's going to be Tony Stark centric, and it's going to be Robert Downey Jr. centric. And he's an amazing actor. We all love Robert Downey. We all want to see him come back. But how can you even bring him back to be Iron Man at this point? And then if it's a circumstance where Doctor Doom is going to have his mask on the whole time, then what the hell was the point of even bringing him back in the first place? Like, what's the point? What is the point? Literally, what is the point at that point? Oh man, I don't mean to be come across extremely negative or jaded about all of this. I've had certain issues with the MCU for a while now, and part of the issue has been that because of real life things, And this happens with every franchise. This happens with everything, every movie. Like there's always real life things that coincide with how the art is produced. However, this these movies are in some form of capacity adaptations of storylines and plots and cartoons and other things that's come before it. So it's not like you're starting from scratch with a lot of these different things. It's an amazing feat what they were able to do with Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man, the Infinity Saga, the Avengers taking these B-list characters, of which I didn't even know that they were B-list growing up, because growing up we had Avengers media, we had the cartoons, the Ultimate Unit, the Ultimate Avengers cartoons, and the Heroes of Tomorrow cartoon movies and everything else like that. Like we Marvel Animation, when Marvel Animation was still kind of running shit, we still had Avengers media. Yes, the movie watch from a cinematic point of view, you had your X-Men, you had your Spider-Man, you had your Blade, and you know what I'm saying, your Fantastic Four and Daredevil and Elektra, and you know you had that. And even that to a certain extent was there was talks of them potentially having a major grouping or a major event where you would bring all these characters in, because that were all basically under the Fox brand at the time, and Sony. Even the Hulk, you know what I'm saying? Like we've had those other movies, but you know we still had Avengers properties, and in every single one of those properties, Iron Man was not the central focus of these movies. If anything, it was Captain America, because Captain America was always a little bit more of a household name, or at least a little bit more well known than Iron Man was. So now, you know, 2008 comes, Iron Man's a household name. Fine, cool. Why do we have to connect that to Doctor Doom? Why do we have to connect that and the legacy of that and the legacy of the Avengers and the legacy of the Infinity Saga to these new characters that's supposed to be taking the Marvel Cinematic Universe into its next steps? Why? Is there a legitimate reason, or is this just marketing? Is this just a cast? Is it that Robert Downey Jr. is just gonna put asses in seats? And then what happens when it's not executed well, and it turns out that the MCU version, which in a lot of different ways, the MCU versions of these characters, for better or for worse, it happened with Iron Man, are now the definitive versions of these characters. What happens if Doctor Doom is not executed well and they change the comic books in order to justify? There's a rumor that basically they're going to be trying to create a comic book storyline now where it's going to basically make a little bit more sense as to how it is. There's something called property synergy. So when Iron Man looks a certain way in the movies, or a certain character is Captain America now, like Sam, you know, Sam's Captain America now. So in the comic books, you'll see a little bit more of Sam. When Miles Morales Spider-Man is the most popular Spider-Man in other media, 9 times out of 10 you'll be seeing him a little bit more in comic book media. The way that the outfits change, Star Lord's outfit no longer looking like his comic book original comic book accurate, not comic book accurate, but his original suit. Now his suit looks a little bit more like the MCU version. Like there's a level of synergy. So when they start taking other properties within Marvel and basically using that to try to justify it, and then it turns out that, hey, maybe this was a misstep too, now you've ruined multiple iterations. Now the comic book version of Doctor Doom has now been changed as well to now fit the synergy of what the MCU is doing. I just this can go I'm looking at it from a little bit more of a negative sense. It might work out perfectly. I'm just worried because of these specific reasons. I'm hoping that they stick the landing. Obviously, I'm happy that Robert Downey Jr. is back in some capacity. I'm an Iron Man fan. I like other characters more, but I do love Iron Man. I do love Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Iron Man. I think that a lot of people need to understand that that's not the original version. I think a lot of people need to understand that that Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal was so good that they changed Iron Man's characterization for other mediums within Marvel. And if they do that with Doctor Doom, that might not work. So I'm just hoping that we don't see a Tony Stark variant of Doctor Doom. If it's gonna be Victor Von Doom, let it be Victor Von Doom, because Victor Von Doom is enough. He's enough. You want people to understand and understand how dangerous of a villain he is. Build him up like how y'all built up Thanos. Don't give him the Ultron treatment. The Ultron treatment is probably one of the biggest travesties in the MCU. Ultron was a Thanos level threat. He really was. But because he was supposed to be just a stepping stone, like how Kang is basically going to be now, it's a circumstance where now it's going to take away from that particular character. And I don't think that we've seen any good comic book storylines with Ultron since that Avengers movie has came out. I could be wrong, but I don't think we've heard a peep out of Ultron. So now we just keeping in mind how the movies kind of affect everything else now. I'm just hoping that they stick the landing so that the legacy of Doctor Doom isn't going to be ruined. Especially since we're getting a Fantastic Four movie, which I'm pretty sure that movie's been in production long before Robert Downey Jr.'s casting for Doctor Doom was announced. So what, are you guys gonna retroactively change that? What hints, what build up to Doctor Doom are you gonna have in that movie now? I don't know if the movie started shooting, but I mean, it's still on the Marvel slate. It's supposed to be coming out fairly soon. So, I mean, shit, I know that there's a concept trailer out, but I haven't watched it because you know how I feel about spoilers. But I don't know, man. I think I've rambled long enough. Um, Hopefully, I articulated my thoughts well. Hopefully, I wasn't a negative Nancy. Don't get me wrong. I love the MCU. I'm happy that they are trying to course correct with certain things because certain shit just wasn't working. But I am still a little bit worried, and I'm just hoping that they stick the landing. I hope that they know what they're doing. I'm happy the Russos is back more so than anything else. And I know that the writer that they brought back is a hell of a writer too. So you know, if anybody can do it, it's them. Just it has to be worth it. It has to be worth it now. It has to make sense. It can't be just for the sake of marketing. You know what I'm saying? Because y'all have taken chances on on other people playing characters before. Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth were not household names until the MCU. Chris Evans was not a household name before the MCU, and Robert Downey definitely wasn't a household name before the MCU. So I would like for them to give other actors a chance, and you know, maybe they still will. Maybe it'll be a fake out, but you know, until then, I feel like some of the issues that the MCU is having is going to persist. And as a comic book fan, as a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you know, it doesn't feel too good at times. But this has been Uncle UU, aka UU007, aka UU, back at it again with another video. You guys take care, drink some water, smile, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.